In this video, we're going to complete the KutaSoftware Infinite Pre-Algebra free worksheet multiplying integers. Now, for numbers 1 through 24, which is this entire worksheet, we're going to find each product. Before we jump into this worksheet, let's go over a quick table that's going to be useful when figuring out whether our number, our solution, is positive or negative. Remember, same signs will result in a positive. Opposite signs will result in a negative. Now that I've drawn the table out, let's go over it. A positive times a negative, opposite signs, that's going to result in a negative. Positive times a positive, same signs, that's going to be a positive. Negative times a positive, opposite signs, that's a negative. And negative times a negative, that's same signs, because a negative is the same as a negative. That's same signs, so that's a positive. So I will say this a lot throughout this video, but repetition will make it stick. A positive times a negative equals a negative. A negative times a positive equals a negative. A positive times a positive equals a positive, and we've been dealing with this one for a few years now. And a negative times a negative equals a positive. So let's get started with number 1. In number 1, we have 6 times negative 4, positive times a negative. That's going to result in a negative. And 6 times 4 is 24, but 6 times negative 4, we know that's a negative, so this will be a negative 24. So once you figure out whether it's a positive or negative, you simply multiply the values like you normally would, remembering the sign of what the result is. So let's move on to number 2. Number 2, positive times a positive, that's going to be a positive. And 4 times 2, we know, is 8. So positive 8 is our solution in number 2. In number 3, we have 3 times negative 4, a positive times a negative, that's going to result in a negative. So now that we've figured out the sign of a few of them, I'll go ahead and start zooming in, but refer back to the table as necessary. So 3 times negative 4 results in a negative, because we have a positive times a negative, opposite signs, our answer is going to be negative, and 3 times 4 is 12. So negative 12 is our solution in number 3. In number 4, we have negative 6 times a positive 4. So because we have a negative multiplied by a positive, our result is going to be negative. And negative 6 times a positive 4, 6 times 4 is 24, so our solution is going to be negative 24. So you can see that number 1 is the same solution, negative 24. In number 1, we had a positive 6 times a negative 4, whereas in number 4, we have a negative 6 times a positive 4. But 6 times 4 is still 24, and because we have one negative and one positive number, each of those gives us a negative solution. In number 5, 5 times negative 4, that's a positive times a negative, positive times a negative results in a negative. So we know our solution is negative. We just have to figure out what that number is. 5 times 4 will give us 20. So negative 20 is our solution in number 5. In number 6, right away, we should be able to figure out if it's positive or negative. Negative times a positive results in a negative. So our solution is going to be negative, and 3 times 4 is 12. So negative 12 is our solution for negative 3 times 4 in number 6. In number 7, we have negative 5 times 6. Negative times a positive, that results in a negative. So we know our solution is negative. We just have to now do the math. 5 times 6 is 30. So negative 30 is our solution in number 7. In number 8, negative times a negative, same signs, negative and negative, that's going to result in a positive. So our solution in number 8, negative 2 times negative 1, well, it's positive. So our solution number 8, 2 times 1, will just be a positive 2. Negative 2 times negative 1 results in a positive, and that will be a positive 2. And number 9, we have negative times negative, which we know, just like in number 8, it's going to be a positive. So negative times a negative equals a positive, and 8 times 2 is 16. So positive 16 is our solution in number 9. In number 10, we have 11 times 12. A positive times a positive results in a positive. So all we have to do is do the math. And I have my multiplication tables memorized up through 12, so I know that 11 times 12 is 132. But if you don't have those tables memorized, let's do the next easiest thing. 1 less than 11 would be 10, and we know that 10 times 12 gives us 120, but we don't need 10 12s, we need 11 12s. So in order to get 11 12s, we'll take 120 and add one more 12. 120 plus 12 equals 132. So here I had 10 12s, I added one more 12 to get to 132. So that's just another trick if you don't have those tables memorized. Let's continue on to number 11. In number 11, we have a negative 7 times 5. A negative times a positive, we know results in a negative. So our solution is going to be negative. We just have to figure out what that value is. 7 times 5 is a 35. So negative 35 is our solution for negative 7 times 5. In number 12, we have a positive times a negative, positive times a negative. We should be thinking that the solution is negative. That's correct. Positive times a negative is a negative, and 9 times 6 is 54. So negative 54 is our solution in number 12. And if you want a really neat trick for multiplying by 9 that makes it super easy, click the link to the video in the description below and prepare to have your mind blown. Multiplying by 9 has never gotten so easy. So go ahead and click that link. And while we're at it, now's probably a good time to click that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Let's move on to number 13. In number 13, we have 10 times 5, positive times a positive, that results in a positive. And 10 times 5 is 50. So positive 50 is our solution in number 13. In number 14, we have 9 times 2. Again, positive times a positive, that's going to be a positive. And 9 times 2 is 18. So positive 18 is our solution in number 14. Now, in number 15, we have a negative 12 times a positive 7. Negative times a positive, that's going to be a negative. So now, 12 times 7, that's 84. So negative 84 is our solution in number 15. On to number 16. In number 16, we have 8 times negative 12. Positive times a negative, that's going to be a negative. So 8 times 12 is 96. So negative 96 is our solution in number 16. And if you knew what 7 times 12 was, like in the previous one, we got 84 for that value, and then a negative times a positive was a negative, but focus on the fact that 7 times 12 was 84. So when we do 8 times 12, all we have to do is add 12 to 84. 12 plus 84, or 84 plus 12, is 96. So 8 times negative 12 is a negative 96. And that's another way to think about mental math. If you know one product for a fact, you can use that result to find other products. Now on to number 17. In number 17, they switch things up a bit. Now, as opposed to multiplying just 2 numbers, we're multiplying 3 different numbers. But the same rules still apply. A positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a negative is positive. A positive times a negative is a negative. And a negative times a positive is a negative. But with 3 numbers, we have to keep track of that. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply from left to right. Feel free to multiply in any order because multiplication is commutative. And actually, in this case, I want to save multiplying by 10 for last because I know that multiplying by 10 makes my life so easy because all I have to do is put a 0 in the ones place and move the rest of my digits to the left. So I'm going to start by doing 9 times 6. And I know that 9 times 6, a positive times a positive results in a positive, and that's a positive 54. But I still need to multiply the rest of that by 10, and 54 times 10, positive times a positive, is a positive. So 540 is my solution in number 17. And again, you could have started with 9 times 10, which is 90, and then multiplied by 6 to get 540 as well. Because multiplication is commutative, the order doesn't matter. So I'll probably switch the order up a little bit just to show you that it doesn't matter, but feel free to stick with whatever order you want. Now, in number 18, we have a negative times a negative times a negative. Well, quickly, I know that my result's going to be negative, and you're probably thinking, well, wait, all of them have the same sign. And yes, all 3 of these have the same sign, but think about when you have a negative times a negative. A negative times a negative results in a positive. So now I have a positive multiplied by a negative, and a positive times a negative results in a negative. So because negative times a negative gives me a positive, I still have this negative, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So I know that my solution is going to be negative. Now we just have to do out the math. And I'm actually going to switch it up and do negative 6 times negative 8. Leaving that negative 10 for last because I think multiplying by 10 is a little bit easier than multiplying negative times negative. That's a positive. So that's going to be a positive 48. And I'm going to multiply that positive 48 by my negative 10. 48 times negative 10 will result in, well, positive times a negative is a negative, and that's going to be a negative 480. So negative 480 is my solution in number 18. 10 times 48, that's 480, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Negative 480 is my solution in number 18. And again, the order didn't matter. You could have done negative 6 times negative 10 to get a positive 60, and positive 60 times negative 8 is negative 480. In number 19, we have a positive times a positive times a positive. Well, I know that a positive times a positive is going to be a positive, and if we have a positive left over, a positive times a positive will give me a positive. So my solution is going to be positive. Now I just got to do out the math. 7 times 9, that's going to be 63. So I'll have 63 times 7. And I know that 63 times 7, well, 7 times 3 is 21. So put the 1 in the ones digit, and then do 6 times 7, which is 42, and add 2 to that to get 44. So 441, and that's a positive 441, is my solution in number 19. And if you need to see that vertically, for visual help, 63 times 7, 3 times 7 is 21, so I'll carry my 2, then 6 times 7, that's going to be 42, plus 2 is 44. 441, and that solution's positive for number 19. In number 20, I have 6 times 6 times negative 2. I know that 6 times 6 is positive because a positive times a positive is a positive, and I'll be multiplying that by a negative. Positive times a negative equals a negative. So my solution is going to be negative. Let's go ahead and do 6 times 6. That's a positive 36, and I'll be multiplying that to a negative 2. 36 times 2 is going to be 72, and positive times a negative is a negative, so negative 72 is my solution in number 20. Another way you could think of this problem is if you have your multiplication tables memorized up to 12, 6 times negative 2 is a negative 12, so then we just have to multiply that negative 12 by 6. And I know that 6 times 12 is 72, so 6 times negative 12 is a negative 72. On to number 21. I have a negative times a negative, which a negative times a negative, that's going to result in a positive. And then I'm going to have a positive multiplied by a negative. And a positive times a negative is going to be a negative. Let's go ahead and do out that math. Negative 5 times negative 4 is going to be a positive 20. And then I have a positive 20 times a negative 10. 20 times 10 is 200. So negative 200 is going to be my solution in number 21, because a positive 20 times a negative 10 is a negative 200. In number 22, I have a positive times a positive, which will result in a positive, and then I'm multiplying that by a negative, so my solution will be negative. Let's just do out the math. 9 times 9 is 81, so I have 81 times negative 5. And 81 times the negative 5, if you need to see that vertically, 81 times 5, 1 times 5 is 5, 8 times 5 is 40. So negative 405 is my solution in number 22, because a positive times a negative results in a negative. In number 23, I have a positive times a positive times a positive, which we know will be positive. So I have 8 times 3, which is 24, and then I'll take that 24 and multiply that by that remaining 8. 24 times 8, if you want to see that done vertically, 4 times 8 is 32, carry my 3, 2 times 8 is 16, plus 3 is 17, 18, 19. So 24 times 8 is a positive 192. I also could have done this in a different order. 8 times 8 is 64. Multiply that by 3 also gives me 192. So the order in which you multiply doesn't matter. And lastly, in this video, number 24. Right away, we should know whether it's positive or negative. It's negative. That's because we have a positive times a positive, which is a positive, and we're multiplying that by a negative. Positive times a negative equals a negative. So let's do out the math. 7 times 5, if I do that first, results in a 35, and I'll multiply that by negative 5. So I know my solution is negative, So I just need to do 35 times 5. And 35 times 5 is going to be 175. So negative 175 is my solution in number 24. And if you need to see that math vertically, 35 times 5, 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2, 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 will give us 17. That's how I got 175, positive times negative, negative. And with that, we wrap up the Multiplying Integers KutaSoftware free infinite pre-algebra worksheet. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Also, if you want more ways to support me, become a patron. Click the Patreon link in my video description to find out more.